Hello, my name is Joseph Evangelista, and this is my grammar lesson on negation. More specifically, I will be doing a lesson on forming negative statements, negative sentences that employ the copular verb be and other verbs in simple past and present tense. My target audience will be middle school ESL students who have a basic knowledge of English, but their level would be beginner, maybe high beginner, low intermediate. They can form simple sentences, they can understand a lot, but they have not quite mastered the negation. And we will have just previously gone over simple past and present verb conjugation and inflection. So they will have a basic understanding of how verbs work, both in the infinitive and the simple past and present form. And so the next logical step will be creating sentences and statements that negate those verbs, that provide negation. This topic is important, and I'll let them know this very explicitly. That it's important because you need to know how to properly negate a statement. We do it all the time in our native language, and I want them to be able to do it in English. Because if you can only say the things you do and not the things you don't do, you'll be very limited. Now, the chances are that they're already using some form of negation just out of necessity, but chances are that it's not grammatically correct or the correct usage. So, to begin with, I would see what the students already know about negation or how they negate sentences already in English. To do that, I would write a few simple sentences on the board, both using the copula be and other verbs, and ask students to negate it, or to write, or not to write, to tell me these sentences in the negative form, right? And based on their responses, I'll see how much they know. But let's just assume that they still need quite a bit of help. So, next thing I would do is I would go into the explanation of the word not. Right? I would say, class, this is an important word when you're negating sentences in English. It is the negation word not. Right? So we need to put this little word in English sentences in order to make it negative. Now, the question is, where do we put it? Right? That depends on the type of sentence. Let's start with simple sentences with the verb be. Right? Remember the verb be? We just talked about this last week, and how we can use the verb be in sentences, such as I am happy, he is a cool guy, they were talking to me. All of these sentences use the same verb that is conjugated. You guys remember this. We just talked about this. All you have to do in these sentences, it's very, very simple, is put the word not after the verb be in these sentences. So, some examples would include I am happy turns into I am not happy. Very, very simple. All you need to do is put the word not after the verb be. Same with the second sentence. He is a cool guy. Turns into he is not a cool guy. They were nice to me turns into they were not nice to me. Whoops, I underlined the wrong word there, but you're supposed to underline not. And she was talking to me turns into she was not talking to me. Very, very simple when you're talking about these simple sentences in past and present tense with the verb be. And you know how to change the verb be based on the subject already. Remember, we talked about that last week. Now, it's not always that simple, but it's still pretty easy when you're using other verbs than be. For instance, even if you have to say, I love you, or he runs very fast, right? You have to do something a little bit more, but it's still very simple. Don't worry. All you do is put the verb do in front of not in front of the verb of the sentence, the main verb of the sentence. Now, the verb do will change, will conjugate. You remember this word, conjugate means change, based on the subject of the sentence, whereas the main verb will go back to the base form, the infinitive form. You remember this word from last week. So, Let's put this into practice, this do not sentence, right? Let's say, I love you, okay? I love you turns into I do not love you. You see that? Let me see if I can get in the camera frame. Whoops. I do not love you. He runs fast turns into he does not run fast. They walked down the street turns into they did not walk down the street. Now, you'll notice that the verb do will change in these sentences. Why does it change? Well, it's just like we talked about last week. When you have a subject, you need to match the verb to the subject. Now, in this case, we have some present and past tense sentences, right? So, I love you. What tense would that be in? That's right, the present tense. So, we have to have a present tense do that matches the singular subject, singular first person subject, I. So we say, I do not. Right? So it doesn't change. It's just the infinitive. However, we have here, he runs fast. And do you remember why we put that little S at the end of run? That's right. If you remember from last week, we talked about how if you have a third person singular subject, right, like he or Jimmy or John, right, you have to put, for a regular verb, S at the end. Well, it's the same thing for do, except it's spelled a little bit funky. That's just because this E is silent. He does not run fast, right? The run changes back into the original basic form, and you conjugate do, right? He does not run fast, okay? And again, this is present or past? Present, that's right, thank you. All right, and then for this third example, they walked down the street. Is this past or present? That's right, this is past. So we have to put do in the past tense. And if you'll notice right here, that would be did. So he did not walk down the street. So we have we have three main forms of this negation. Do not, does not, and did not. And remember, you have to use these three depending on the subject of the sentence. Okay, so remember, for sentences using the verb be, right, you just add not after be. He is not happy, right? But for sentences using other verbs, you have to write do plus not plus the verb, right? And you need to change the do to match the subject. So, he does not like me. Okay? Does that make sense? Wonderful. All right. At this point, after I gave my explanation of the grammar of negation and the word not, which will be our focus for today, that word not, I will do the same activity that I did in the beginning, where I write some sentences on the board and ask the students to give me the negative version of that sentence. Hopefully, ideally, after my explanation, their success rate will go up. I will see some visible improvement. If they seem to not quite be getting it, or if they seem just confused, if it's too much for them, then I will backtrack and explain it again, maybe using different words, simpler vocabulary. But the basic idea is to get them to be able to do that initial activity with pretty high levels of success. After they can display that they can do that, the activities that we'll do for the rest of the class will be, initially, each student will have a partner, right? And each student will come up with 3 to 5 simple sentences, right? They can be past or present, and they can be sentences using be or other verbs. It's their choice. 3 to 5, depending on the student's level. I will either make them write 3 or 5, depending on differentiation, how the students are feeling with this. Their partners will not know the sentences that they are writing down. Once everybody's written their sentences, I will invite the partners to the front of the class where one student will read off their sentences, and after each sentence they read, their partner, who has not heard these sentences, will give the negative form of that statement, right? This will cause them to be thinking about the negation in in real time, in quick time, and they may not get it perfect. You know, they might slip up a little bit, and I'll allow them to look at their notes. Because it's not about memorizing this; it's about them trying to absorb it and using it in real life, right? So I allow them to look at the notes and the handouts I give them, which are included in the discussion post that I'm going to put this video in. So there will be two different handouts that I give them, one of which will be um, a, a chart with all the negative forms of sentences with the verb be in simple past or simple past and simple present tense. And the other chart I will give them, the other handout I'll give them is the same thing. It's a chart with negative examples of sentences, only this time it's used with other verbs in simple past and simple present tense. So they'll be allowed to consult that during this activity if they need it. There's no problem there. It's just about trying to get them to think about these and use it in real time quickly, right? Once they've demonstrated that, I will have each of them write, I will have them all sit down, groups are over. I'll have each of them write a short 5 to 7 sentence story about what they did not do yesterday. And I'll have them use at least 4 negative statements or negative sentences. These stories can be as silly or as serious as they like, as long as they follow the instructions and use 4 negative sentences. Now, the reason for these 2 activities, and the reason they're both important, is they allow students to use negation both with each other, speaking out loud in real quick time, and also use it in writing, and they can think about it and consult their notes. The reason I have these 2 activities is because maybe one student is very comfortable getting in front of the class and speaking and saying things in real time, but maybe another student is a bit more comfortable just sitting there and writing and being, a bit more introverted and thinking about things slower. The activities, everyone should do both activities, but the activities are designed so that if one student has trouble in either one, they're able to shine in at least one. I will be sure to tell them that we will continue with the negation or using negation in sentences when we get to yes or no questions, which will probably be in the next lesson we do, or the next unit, I suppose, because we'll be talking about yes or no questions, and they'll have further opportunity to practice using negative sentences. And with that, I think that my lesson would be done. They would be done for the day. I would take up the sheets and say goodbye. Tell them to review the charts that I've given them at home, and come back the next day ready to learn. Thank you.